My wife sneered. During our heated argument, my ex was better in bed than you'll ever be. I still think about him. I didn't argue. I just quietly packed my bags and left that night. 3 months later, she sent me a panicked text. I'm pregnant, and he wants nothing to do with us. I made a terrible mistake. Please. I read it once, then blocked her forever. Story. Nothing says your marriage is circling the drain, quite like finding your wife's phone buzzing with heart emojis at 6 a.m. while she's still pretending to sleep. I'm Nick Garrison, 39 years old, and I fix computers for a living. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and taught me one valuable lesson. When something's broken, you either repair it or replace it. My wife Erica was definitely broken. I stood in our kitchen, watching her thumb through messages with the kind of smile she hadn't given me in months. Her blonde hair was perfectly arranged, despite supposedly just waking up, and she wore that new workout outfit that cost more than my monthly car payment. Morning, sunshine, I said, pouring coffee into my favorite mug, the one that read, World's Okayest Husband. Seemed fitting these days. She barely looked up. I'm meeting Fiona for CrossFit this morning. Don't wait up tonight. We're having dinner after. Again? That's the 3rd time this week. I'm trying to better myself, Nick. Maybe you should try it sometime. I took a sip of coffee and watched her type another message, giggling like a teenager. Better yourself how exactly? By spending every evening away from home? Erica finally looked at me, and I saw something cold in her green eyes. Maybe if you made more effort, I wouldn't need to find excitement elsewhere. The words hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to ask what she meant by elsewhere, but part of me already knew. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she recoiled when I tried to touch her, all the classic signs I'd been too stubborn to acknowledge. What's his name? I asked quietly. What are you talking about? The guy you're texting, the one making you smile like that. Erica's face flushed red. You're being paranoid and controlling. This is exactly why I need space. She grabbed her gym bag and headed for the door, but turned back with a look of pure venom. You want to know the truth, Nick? My ex was better in bed than you'll ever be. I still think about him when we used to. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The front door slammed, leaving me alone with my coffee and the wreckage of whatever we'd been pretending to call a marriage. I didn't throw anything, didn't punch a wall or scream. Instead, I did what any IT professional would do. I started gathering data. Erica had left her laptop open on the counter, still logged into her social media accounts. I'm not proud of what I did next, but desperate times call for desperate measures. A quick scroll through her messages revealed everything I needed to know. Travis T.J. Jeffers, gym manager at CrossFit downtown. 36 years old, drove a modified Dodge Charger, and apparently had been training my wife in ways that had nothing to do with fitness. The messages went back 3 months. 3 months of lies, secret meetings, and detailed discussions about what they'd do when that loser husband was finally out of the picture. I screenshot everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud drive, then closed the laptop. By the time Erica returned that evening, I'd packed 2 suitcases and loaded them into my Honda Civic. Where are you going? She asked, standing in the doorway with her hair messed up and her lips swollen. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Giving you the space you wanted, I said, grabbing my keys. Nick, wait. We should talk about this. I paused at the door. About what? About TJ? About how you've been lying to me for months? About how you just spent the afternoon with him instead of at the gym? Her mouth fell open. How did you? I fix broken things for a living, Erica. I know how to find problems. I walked to my car, tossed the suitcases in the back, and started the engine. Through the windshield, I could see her standing on our front porch, arms crossed, looking more annoyed than sorry. As I pulled out of the driveway, she shouted something I couldn't quite hear, but I read her lips clearly enough. You'll regret this, loser. I smiled grimly and drove toward the Motel 6 on Highway 34. Not as much as you will, sweetheart. Not even close. The Sunset Motel wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it had 2 things going for it. Cheap weekly rates and Wi-Fi that didn't completely stink. I'd been living there for 2 weeks, surviving on vending machine coffee and enough ramen noodles to qualify for a sodium overdose. But I wasn't wallowing. I was planning. My buddy Raj owned a dive bar called Murphy's, and he'd been letting me use the back office as my unofficial headquarters. Raj was 40, had been tending bar since college, and possessed the kind of cynical wisdom that comes from listening to people's problems for 20 years. So what's the plan? He asked, sliding a beer across the scratched wooden table. You gonna lawyer up? Take her for everything? Lawyers cost money I don't have, I said, opening my laptop. Besides, this isn't about money. It's about justice. Justice? Raj laughed. Brother, justice is what happens in courtrooms. What you're talking about sounds like revenge. Potato, potato. I'd spent the past 2 weeks doing what I do best, gathering information. Erica thought she was smart, but she'd made the classic mistake of assuming I was too dumb to figure things out. First discovery. She'd been lying about her salary. I'd found pay stubs showing she made $15,000 more per year than she'd told me. While I'd been eating generic cereal and skipping lunch to save money, she'd been building a secret nest egg. Second discovery. The charity work she'd been bragging about to our neighbors was completely fabricated. She'd never volunteered anywhere, never donated anything except maybe her dignity. Third discovery. She had a profile on something called discreetmeetings.com under the name FitMommy34. The photos were educational. But the real goldmine came when I hired a private investigator. Stan Morrison looked exactly like you'd expect a PI to look. Rumpled suit, 5 o'clock shadow at noon, and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much. He worked out of an office above a pawn shop and charged reasonable rates because, as he put it, cheating spouse cases are my bread and butter. Your wife's boyfriend is a real piece of work, Stan said, dropping a manila folder on Raj's bar. Travis Jerome Jeffers, age 36, manages CrossFit downtown but lives way beyond his means. Drives that fancy Charger, but it's leased under his ex-girlfriend's name because his credit's garbage. What else? He's been sleeping with half the gym's female clientele. Married women, mostly. Seems to have a type. Stan pulled out a stack of photos. That's him with Mrs. Henderson from Maple Street. That's him with the mayor's wife. And that's him with some college girl who definitely isn't old enough to know better. I studied the photos. TJ wasn't particularly handsome. Average height, too much gel in his hair, the kind of artificial tan that screamed insecurity. But he had that cocky swagger some women seem to find irresistible. There's more, Stan continued. He's got a side business selling supplements that aren't exactly FDA approved, if you know what I mean. And his ex-girlfriend, the one whose name is on the car lease, she's been looking for him because he owes her 3 months of payments. What's her name? Amber Collins. Works at the Rusty Anchor downtown. Real firecracker, from what I hear. Hates his guts. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. TJ wasn't just a cheater, he was a serial cheater with financial problems and a list of enemies. This was getting interesting. One more thing, Stan said, pulling out his phone. I managed to get some audio from their little rendezvous yesterday. He played a recording of TJ's voice, slightly muffled, but clear enough. Erica's not bad for an older chick, but she's getting clingy. Keeps talking about leaving her husband. I mean, I'll take the free action, but I'm not looking to play house with some desperate housewife, you know? The voice responding was unfamiliar, probably one of his gym buddies. What about the husband? What about him? Guy's a total beta, fixes computers for a living, probably never thrown a punch in his life. If he ever grows a pair and confronts me, I'll put him in the hospital. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Stan, you beautiful, cynical man. This is perfect. What's your next move? I closed the laptop and finished my beer. I'm going to give TJ exactly what he deserves, and Erica's going to have a front row seat. Raj shook his head. Nick, whatever you're thinking, maybe you should sleep on it? Turn the other cheek? Forgive and forget? I stood up, tucking the folder under my arm. Raj, they've been laughing at me for months, calling me a beta, a loser, planning my humiliation while I paid the bills and played the faithful husband. I headed for the door, then turned back. But they made one crucial mistake. They assumed I'd stay down when they knocked me over. They're about to learn that the quiet guy who fixes computers has been taking notes this whole time. The next morning, I started making phone calls. The beauty of revenge, I'd learned, was in the details. Not the big, dramatic gestures you see in movies, but the small, precise cuts that slowly bleed your target dry. TJ's gym opened at 5 a.m. for the early crowd. Lawyers, doctors, and other professionals who wanted to work out before their real jobs began. I knew this because I'd been watching the place for 3 days, learning the patterns. I also knew that TJ arrived at 6, parked his precious Charger in the same spot every day, and spent the first hour of his shift flirting with female clients instead of actually working. At 5:30 a.m. on a Tuesday, I walked into CrossFit downtown carrying a stack of flyers and wearing a baseball cap pulled low over my eyes. The morning rush was in full swing, and nobody paid attention to one more middle-aged guy in workout clothes. The locker rooms were perfect for my purposes. Dozens of individual lockers, most standing open while their owners sweated through their morning routines. I moved quickly, slipping a single sheet of paper into each locker. The flyer was simple but effective. At the top, in bold letters, "Ladies, know who you're training with." Below that was TJ's profile from discreetmeetings.com, complete with his shirtless photos and a direct quote from one of his messages. "Married women are the best. They know what they want, and they don't expect commitment." At the bottom, I'd included screenshots of text conversations between TJ and 3 different women, with names blacked out but dates clearly visible. The conversations were graphic, boastful, and absolutely devastating. I finished my distribution just as the 6 a.m. crowd started filtering in. By 6:15, I was sitting in my Honda across the street, watching the chaos unfold through the gym's floor-to-ceiling windows. It started slowly. A woman reading something, her face changing from confusion to anger, then another woman showing her phone to a friend. Within minutes, a crowd had gathered around the front desk where TJ stood looking increasingly uncomfortable. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Lila from the gym front desk. Not sure who you are, but thank you. This place is going crazy, and TJ totally deserves it." Apparently, I'd found an ally. The situation escalated quickly. Through the windows, I could see women waving the flyers, pointing accusingly at TJ, and several of them storming toward the exit. One woman, a redhead in expensive workout gear, got right up in TJ's face and started yelling loud enough that I could hear her through the glass. TJ's boss, a serious-looking man in his 50s, emerged from the back office. Even from across the street, I could see this wasn't going well for CrossFit's star trainer. But I wasn't done. My next stop was the Rusty Anchor, where Amber Collins worked the day shift. The bar was exactly what you'd expect: dim lighting, sticky floors, and the kind of regulars who started drinking before noon and had opinions about everything. Amber was behind the bar, a petite brunette with sleeve tattoos and the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. I ordered a beer and waited for the right moment. "You Amber?" I asked when the bar cleared out. "Depends who's asking." "Someone who thinks you should know your ex-boyfriend is driving around in a car you're still paying for." Her expression shifted from suspicious to interested. "You talking about TJ? Travis Jerome Jeffers, gym manager, owes you 3 months of car payments, currently using your charger to impress married women he meets online." Amber set down the glass she'd been cleaning. "How do you know about the car payments?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the photos Stan had taken, TJ with various women, always posed next to the black Charger. "Because he screwed over my wife, and now I'm returning the favor. Question is, are you interested in getting what's owed to you?" "What did you have in mind?" I slid a piece of paper across the bar. It had TJ's schedule, his home address, and the gym's parking lot layout. He parks in the same spot every day, leaves the car unlocked because he thinks nobody would dare mess with it. Seems to me like someone who's been making the payments might want to reclaim their property. Amber studied the paper, a slow smile spreading across her face. "You know what? I think you're right. In fact, I think I'll go collect what's mine right after my shift ends." "One more thing," I said, finishing my beer. "He's got a spare key hidden in a magnetic box under the rear bumper. Left side." "How do you know that?" "I fix things for a living. You learn to notice details." I left the Rusty Anchor feeling better than I had in weeks. By evening, TJ would be dealing with an angry ex-girlfriend, a furious boss, and a gym full of women who now knew exactly what kind of man he really was. But the day's entertainment wasn't over. At 7 p.m., I drove to the neighborhood barbecue at the community center. These monthly gatherings were Erica's favorite social events, a chance to show off, gossip with the other wives, and play the role of perfect suburban housewife. I hadn't been invited, obviously, but it was a public event, and I was still technically a resident of Maple Street. Mrs. Conway, our 60-year-old neighbor and the unofficial queen of local gossip, spotted me first. "Nick, I didn't expect to see you here. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected, Mrs. Conway. Actually, I wanted to clear up some rumors that have been going around." A small crowd gathered, exactly what I'd hoped for. Erica was across the room, talking animatedly with Fiona and pretending not to notice my arrival. "Some people have been saying I was abusive or controlling," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I thought you all should know the truth." I pulled out my phone and played a recording I'd made during one of our arguments the week before I moved out. Erica's voice came through clearly. "I've been seeing someone else for months, Nick. He's everything you're not. Confident, successful, attractive. I only stayed with you because it was convenient." The crowd went silent. Mrs. Conway's mouth fell open. "There's more," I continued, playing another clip. "TJ knows how to treat a woman. He doesn't bore me with talk about computers and budgets. He makes me feel alive again. Erica had gone pale. She started walking toward me, but I wasn't finished. "And my personal favorite," I said, playing the final recording. "I can't wait until Nick finds out. The look on his face will be priceless. He's so pathetic, he'll probably just take it and beg me to stay." The crowd turned to stare at Erica, who had frozen in place. Her face was bright red, and for the first time since I'd known her, she seemed truly speechless. "So just to be clear," I announced, "I wasn't abusive or controlling. I was just married to a liar and a cheater who thought I was too stupid to figure it out." I pocketed my phone and headed for the exit, but turned back for one final comment. "Oh, and Erica, you might want to check on your boyfriend. I hear he's having a rough day." As I walked to my car, I could hear the explosion of conversation behind me. Mrs. Conway's voice rose above the rest. "Well, I never. Erica Garrison, you have some explaining to do." I drove back to the motel with the windows down and classic rock playing on the radio. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your car is in the impound lot on 5th Street. Payment plan is officially canceled. Thanks for the tip." A. Perfect. TJ was about to have a very interesting evening. The thing about small towns is that gossip travels faster than bad news and sticks around longer than house guests. By Thursday morning, everyone in our neighborhood knew about Erica's affair, and the whispers followed her everywhere she went. I knew this because Mrs. Conway called me at 8 a.m. to provide a detailed report. "Nick, dear, you should have seen her at the grocery store yesterday, standing in line behind the Hendersons, bold as brass, when Mrs. Henderson turns around and says, 'Some people have no shame.' Erica went red as a tomato and left her cart right there in the checkout line." "That's unfortunate," I said, trying to sound sympathetic while I grinned at my reflection in the motel bathroom mirror. "And that boyfriend of hers, the gym fellow, word is his car got repossessed and he had to walk home from work. In this heat. Serves him right, if you ask me." I thanked Mrs. Conway for the update and hung up, feeling satisfied but not finished. Public embarrassment was just the appetizer. The main course required more sophisticated planning. That's when I remembered Marta Gonzalez. Marta worked in Erica's HR department and had been passed over for the promotion Erica received 6 months ago. According to office gossip, Marta believed the promotion should have been hers and harbored serious resentment about the decision. I'd met Marta at a few company parties, a serious woman in her 40s who didn't smile much and had the kind of memory that stored every slight, real or imagined. Finding her was easy. She ate lunch at the same deli every day, always alone, always reading reports while she ate. "Marta, Nick Garrison, Erica's husband, we met at the Christmas party." She looked up from her sandwich, expression neutral. "I heard you two separated." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. I found some things that might interest you. Things about Erica that the company should probably know about." Marta set down her sandwich. "What kind of things?" I pulled out a folder containing printouts of Erica's fake charity work claims, her lies about volunteer hours, and most importantly, screenshots of her using company computers to maintain her profile on discreetmeetings.com during work hours. "She's been falsifying her community service records for performance reviews," I explained, "and using company resources for personal activities that could create liability issues for HR." Marta studied the documents carefully, her expression growing more interested with each page. "Where did you get these?" "Does it matter? The question is whether your company wants to keep employing someone who lies on official documents and uses work computers for dating sites." "Dating sites?" I showed her the screenshots proving Erica had been accessing discreetmeetings.com from her work computer, complete with timestamps and browser history. Multiple times per day, for months, all during work hours. Marta's smile was cold and satisfied. "You know, Nick, I think this information would be very valuable to our compliance department, and to Mr. Lewin, our department head. He's very old school about personal conduct reflecting on the company." "I thought you might feel that way. I'll make sure this gets the attention it deserves." I left the deli knowing Erica's work situation was about to become very uncomfortable, but I wasn't done with TJ either. That evening, I drove to Murphy's bar where Raj was working his usual shift. The place was busier than normal. Apparently word had gotten around about my situation, and half the neighborhood had stopped by to offer support or get the latest gossip. "You're becoming quite the local celebrity," Raj said, sliding me a beer. "Mrs. Conway was in here earlier, telling everyone about your speech at the barbecue." "Fame isn't what I'm after." "What are you after, exactly?" Before I could answer, the front door opened and TJ walked in. He looked terrible, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, the kind of desperate appearance that comes from having your world collapse in a single day. He spotted me immediately and started walking over, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You," he said, pointing a finger at my chest. "You're the one who's been causing all my problems." "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" I asked calmly, taking a sip of my beer. "Don't play dumb. You're Erica's husband, the computer geek." "Ex-husband, technically. And yes, I work in IT. What can I do for you?" TJ was practically vibrating with rage. "You cost me my job. You got my car repossessed. You turned half the gym against me." "That's terrible. What makes you think I had anything to do with it?" "Because it all started happening right after you found out about us." The bar had gone quiet. Everyone was watching our conversation, phones probably recording every word. "Found out about what?" I asked innocently. TJ's face got redder. "About me and Erica." "Oh, that. Yeah, I knew about that for weeks. Erica's not as sneaky as she thinks she is." "Then why didn't you do anything?" I set down my beer and looked at him directly. "What makes you think I didn't?" TJ stared at me for a long moment, processing the implication. Then his face twisted with rage and he swung at me. I'd been expecting it. TJ was the kind of guy who solved problems with his fists, and public humiliation had pushed him past his breaking point. I ducked under his wild swing and stepped aside, letting his momentum carry him into an empty table. He crashed into the chairs, sending them clattering across the floor. "Whoa there, Rocky," I said, brushing imaginary dust off my shirt. "That's the most cardio you've done since high school." TJ scrambled to his feet, but Raj was already coming around the bar with a baseball bat. "Time to go, champ," Raj said firmly. "And don't come back." "This isn't over," TJ snarled as Raj escorted him toward the door. "Actually, it is," I called after him. "You just don't know it yet." The bar erupted in applause as the door closed behind him. Several people clapped me on the back, and someone bought me another beer. My phone buzzed with a text from Erica. "We need to talk. Can you come over tonight?" I showed the message to Raj, who shook his head. "Don't do it, man. It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," I replied, typing back a response. "That's what makes it interesting." I told Erica I'd be there at 9 p.m., then spent the next hour making sure my phone was fully charged and my recording app was working perfectly. Some traps are worth walking into, especially when you're the one who set the bait. Erica had cleaned the house. That was the first thing I noticed when she opened the front door. Everything spotless, candles burning, the smell of expensive perfume mixing with whatever she'd cooked for dinner. She was trying to seduce me back. "Nick, thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside to let me in. She wore a blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago, back when I still thought we had a future together. "Nice place," I said, looking around what used to be our living room. "You've redecorated?" "I put away some of your things. I wasn't sure. I hoped maybe you'd want to come home." I sat down on the couch, noting how she'd positioned herself across from me in the chair that caught the candlelight best, everything calculated, everything designed to remind me of better times. "How's work going?" I asked casually. Her smile faltered slightly. "It's been challenging. There have been some personnel issues, but I don't want to talk about work tonight." "And TJ? How's he handling his recent setbacks?" Erica's face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "The car repossession, the job situation, the fact that half the women in town now know exactly what kind of man he is." "Nick, Let me save you some time," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. "I know about everything. The affair, the lies, the fake charity work, the dating profile, all of it." I played one of the recordings I'd made during our argument weeks ago, her voice clear and cruel. "He's everything you're not. Confident, successful, attractive." Erica started crying, but they looked like calculated tears. "I made a mistake, Nick. I was confused and lonely, and I did something terrible. But it's over now. TJ and I are finished." "Really? Since when?" "Since yesterday. He said some things. About me, about us. I realized what kind of person he really is." I leaned forward, genuinely curious. "What kind of things?" "He called me desperate, said I was just another bored housewife looking for excitement. He said..." She wiped her eyes carefully, preserving her makeup. "He said he was never serious about me, that I was just convenient." That must have been disappointing. It was humiliating. "Nick, I know I hurt you terribly, but I want to make it right. I want us to try again." She moved from the chair to the couch, sitting close enough that I could smell her perfume. Her hand touched my arm, fingers tracing patterns on my sleeve. "I've learned so much about myself these past few weeks," she continued. "About what's really important. You're a good man, Nick. Stable, reliable, faithful. I was an idiot to risk losing you. Stable and reliable, I repeated. That's quite a romantic declaration. I mean it in the best way. TJ was exciting, but excitement isn't everything. You're the kind of man a woman builds a life with. I looked at her carefully. The perfect makeup, the strategic dress, the practiced vulnerability. Even now, even after everything, she was performing. What about the money? I asked. What money? The $15,000 a year you've been hiding from me. The secret account you've been building while I ate generic cereal and skipped lunch to save money. Her face went white. How did you? I told you, I know about everything. The question is, what were you planning to do with that money? Erica was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was smaller, less confident. I was scared, Nick. Scared that something would happen to us, that I'd need to take care of myself. It wasn't about you, it was about security. Security from what? From me? From being dependent, from being trapped. So you were planning to leave me anyway. No, I wanted to have options, but I never wanted to hurt you. I stood up, walking to the window that looked out on our street. Mrs. Conway's house was dark, but I knew she was probably watching from behind her curtains. Here's what's going to happen, I said without turning around. Tomorrow morning, you're going to call Mr. Lewin and explain why you've been using company computers for personal business. You're going to apologize to Marta for lying about your community service hours, and you're going to transfer half of that secret account to me as compensation for the months of lies. Nick, please. I'm not finished. I turned to face her. You're also going to call Mrs. Conway, Mrs. Henderson, and every other neighbor you've been bad-mouthing me to, and you're going to tell them the truth about why our marriage ended. I can't do that. It would be social suicide. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to cheat on me and blame me for it. Erica's carefully constructed facade finally cracked. The tears stopped, the vulnerable act disappeared, and I saw the cold calculation that had been hiding underneath. You can't make me do any of that, she said. And even if you could, what makes you think I'd take you back after you've spent weeks trying to destroy my life? Who said anything about getting back together? But you came here tonight? I came here to see how far you'd go to save yourself. The answer is apparently seduction and manipulation, which is about what I expected. I headed for the door, but she grabbed my arm. Nick, wait, I'm pregnant. I stopped, turned around, and looked at her carefully. No, you're not. How can you say that? Because you're lying. You've been lying about everything else. Why stop now? I can prove it. I have a test. Erica, I've been tracking your cycles for 2 years, trying to get you pregnant, remember? You're not due for another week, and even if you were, the timing doesn't work unless TJ's the father. Her face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally defeat. Besides, I added, I called Dr. Martinez's office yesterday. You haven't been in for an appointment in 6 months. I opened the front door and stepped outside, breathing in the cool evening air. This is really it, she called after me. You're really going to throw away 5 years of marriage? I'm not throwing anything away, I said. You already did that. As I walked to my car, I could hear her crying behind me. But these weren't the calculated tears from earlier. These were the real thing, the sound of someone finally understanding that actions have consequences. My phone was still recording everything. The Maple Street Community Festival happened every year in late September, when the weather was perfect and everyone wanted to pretend our little neighborhood was something special. Booths selling homemade crafts, a dunk tank manned by local volunteers, face painting for the kids, and enough gossip to fuel conversations through Christmas. This year, I was the main topic of conversation. I'd been living at the motel for 6 weeks now, and my transformation from Erica's quiet husband to the guy who exposed the cheaters had made me something of a local celebrity. People I barely knew waved at me on the street, and Mrs. Conway had apparently started an informal fan club. The festival was Erica's chance to rehabilitate her image. I knew she'd be there, playing the role of wronged woman, trying to win back the sympathy of our neighbors. I also knew TJ would show up. He'd been drinking heavily since losing his job, and according to Raj, he'd been talking about settling things with me. Perfect. I arrived at the festival around noon, wearing jeans and a polo shirt, looking like any other suburban dad enjoying a Saturday afternoon. The crowd was thick, families with strollers, teenagers trying to look bored, elderly couples sharing funnel cake. I spotted Erica first. She was working the charity booth, wearing a modest sundress and her most sincere smile, talking to Mrs. Henderson about community involvement and giving back. The irony was almost painful. Nick! Mrs. Conway appeared at my elbow, practically vibrating with excitement. I'm so glad you came. Everyone's been asking about you. It's good to see everyone, I said, scanning the crowd. Looks like a great turnout. Oh, yes, and the drama. Did you hear about Erica's little speech at the women's auxiliary meeting? She tried to claim you'd been emotionally distant and that's why she strayed. Well, let me tell you, nobody was buying it after what happened at the barbecue. I smiled politely while Mrs. Conway continued her recap, but my attention was focused on the far side of the festival where TJ had just arrived. He looked worse than the last time I'd seen him. Unshaven, wrinkled clothes, the kind of desperate appearance that comes from having nowhere left to fall. He was also clearly intoxicated. TJ spotted me almost immediately and started pushing through the crowd in my direction. Several people noticed and began pulling out their phones. Apparently everyone was expecting some kind of confrontation. "There he is!" TJ shouted, pointing at me with an unsteady finger. "The little computer nerd who thinks he's so smart." The crowd around us went quiet, creating a circle of space like spectators at a car accident. "TJ," I said calmly, "you look terrible. Maybe you should go home and sleep it off." "Sleep it off? You destroyed my life. My job, my car, my reputation, all because you couldn't handle the fact that your wife preferred a real man." I could see Erica across the crowd, her face pale as she realized what was happening. This wasn't part of her rehabilitation plan. "Your life was already a mess," I replied. "I just helped people see it more clearly." TJ took a swing at me, but alcohol had made him slow and clumsy. I stepped aside easily, and he stumbled forward into a display of homemade preserves. Jars crashed to the ground, sending glass and strawberry jam across the grass. The crowd gasped and pulled back further. Someone was definitely recording this. "Come on, TJ," I said, backing toward the game booths. "You can do better than that. All those hours at the gym should count for something." He charged at me again, but I ducked behind the ring toss booth, forcing him to chase me through the festival games. The crowd followed, phones held high, capturing every stumbling step. I led him past the face painting station, around the cotton candy machine, and finally toward the main attraction, the dunk tank where volunteers were raising money for the fire department. TJ was breathing hard now, sweat streaming down his face, but he kept coming. "Stand still and fight me like a man." "Fighting you wouldn't be fair," I called back. "You're drunk, unemployed, and homeless. I'd feel bad about beating up someone so pathetic." That did it. TJ let out a roar of rage and lunged at me with everything he had left. I sidestepped at the last second. TJ's momentum carried him straight into the dunk tank's platform. He hit the target perfectly, triggering the mechanism that dropped the volunteer, a good-natured local cop, into the water below. But TJ's trajectory didn't stop there. He flipped over the platform and crashed into the tank himself, sending up an enormous splash that soaked the first 3 rows of spectators. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. TJ surfaced, sputtering and disoriented, his phone ruined, his dignity completely destroyed. The volunteer cop was laughing so hard he could barely climb out of the tank. "Best dunk tank performance we've ever had," someone shouted. "Do it again," called another voice. TJ struggled to climb out of the tank, but the sides were slippery and he kept falling back in. Each attempt brought fresh laughter from the crowd. That's when Erica arrived. She pushed through the spectators, her face a mask of fury and embarrassment. "Nick, this has gone far enough." "Has it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "You're humiliating us in front of the entire neighborhood." "I'm not doing anything. TJ humiliated himself. You humiliated yourself. I'm just standing here watching." Erica looked around at the crowd, at the phones recording everything, at TJ still floundering in the dunk tank. Her carefully planned image rehabilitation had become a public disaster. "You planned this," she accused. "You knew he'd be here, knew he'd be drinking, knew exactly how to provoke him." "I knew TJ was the kind of man who solves problems with his fists and has no self-control when he's angry. Everything else was just basic psychology." She raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist gently. "I wouldn't do that, Erica. Not with all these cameras watching." She looked around again, finally understanding that every moment of this confrontation was being recorded and would be shared across social media within hours. Her hand dropped to her side, and for the first time since I'd known her, Erica looked genuinely defeated. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing," I said. "I don't want anything from you at all." I released her wrist and started walking away, but she followed. "Nick, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over, make this right." I stopped and turned to face her one last time. "Erica, you cheated on me for months, lied to our friends and neighbors about me, stole money from our household budget, and tried to manipulate me back into a relationship you never valued in the first place. What exactly do you think we should work out? I made mistakes. You made choices, and choices have consequences. The crowd was still watching, still recording, but I didn't care anymore. This conversation was long overdue. I spent 5 years trying to make you happy, I continued. I worked overtime to pay for things you wanted. I supported your career. I listened to you complain about everything I did wrong while you were secretly planning to replace me. I was a good husband, Erica. Maybe not exciting, maybe not perfect, but good. And you threw it away for a guy who called you desperate behind your back. Tears were running down her face now, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret. Just emptiness where my love for her used to be. So, no, we're not working anything out. We're not going to counseling. We're not starting over. We're done. I walked away through the crowd, which parted respectfully to let me pass. Behind me, I could hear Erica crying and TJ still splashing around in the dunk tank. At the edge of the festival, I turned back for one last look. Erica was standing alone in the middle of the crowd, her sundress wrinkled, her makeup ruined, finally understanding that some bridges can't be rebuilt once you've burned them down. TJ had finally managed to climb out of the tank and was stumbling away, dripping wet and humiliated, his tough guy reputation destroyed forever. And me? I was walking toward my Honda Civic, toward my motel room, toward whatever came next. For the first time in months, I felt free. Sometimes karma just needs a little push, or a dunk tank.